This is Hannibal here with a UFO kind of news update and review of Commander David Fravor, who testified at the last U.S. congressional hearings on unidentified flying objects, aka unidentified aerial phenomena. He did his most open interview ever. He's been on Joe Rogan, he's been on Lex Fridman, he's been on News Nation. He did an interview with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbet that was released recently. That was his most extensive one ever. Talked about he was the one that 20 years ago actually is the guy that was following the Tic Tac UFO, the 2000 Tic Tac UFO video. Before I get into my review of that, Luis Elizondo, former head of the Pentagon's UFO program, has confirmed that he is going to be testifying at the third UFO congressional hearing coming up this Wednesday in Washington. I'm really looking forward to that. I just want to play you quickly the most interesting thing from this whole Commander David Fravor interview. I'm only going to play you a second of it. Here you go.
Let us know that we're not alone. On fact, like, hey, we got this. Roswell, perfect example. Hey, it crashed at Roswell. We know it was broken up from the reports that initially came out. Show us, hey, like the metal that you can crinkle up and let go.
He's basically saying he's a former, he works in aerospace now, but he's saying to the government, let us know that we're not alone. We can take the news, and it's not necessarily going to reveal whatever technology you have from whatever crash retrievals you have or whatever research you've done. You don't have to say everything you know or all the details, but you can say, hey, we're not the only thing in this universe, and we are being visited. But that was one of the most interesting things of this interview. He thinks that the government should come clean about, we're not alone. Former Navy commander. So let's get into his interview. Here's an interesting part. He said he doesn't do many interviews, and he did one as a favor for someone for Vice that interviewed him for a few hours in his home, and they only used 2 minutes of it. And he doesn't like when people do stuff like that because they can mix what people say. And I just want to say right now, and the other thing he said, they make you feel comfortable letting them into your home. I had that same experience with Vice, Dark Side of the Ring. Let them into my home, talk to me for 6 hours, and they did very creative editing on my Vice episode on the Abdullah the Butcher, Dark Side of the Ring. But I'm not going to get into that. I just could relate to him saying that you trust these people, then they play with your footage. He's not saying that they necessarily did it crazy to him or anything. He's just saying he doesn't like to do interviews like that for those reasons. He said, as far as the Tic Tac UFO that he followed, he said he would know if the government had that type of technology. And he doesn't think this is any technology any government has at this point or are able to develop in the next 10 years. And he currently works in aerospace. He's not even going to develop, let us know what aerospace company he works for, but he works for them. He says the Tic Tac that he was following had no wings, no visible signs of lift or propulsion. It was mirroring his moves speed-wise, and it was hovering above the ocean for 3 hours. And after hovering for 3 hours, it could shoot back up. So these things have crazy technology. He says, we are still building airplanes with jet engines. They are much more efficient and quieter from before, but they haven't evolved beyond that. And I was actually thinking when I was recently on my trip to Hawaii, how long a trip that was, flying from Chicago to Hawaii, and thinking the same thing. If any of this technology was ours, why does it still take so long to fly from Chicago to Hawaii? I mean, our plane, I know it's different for the military, but our plane technology has not really evolved that much since it began, as far as times when you see how fast UFOs go. He says for the people where I've seen people like that scientist that I can't even remember. Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson claimed that the Tic Tac may have been seagulls, balloons, or exhaust from another jet. He said him and his radar operators are military professionals. In 2004, he had been flying for 16 years. He currently has 4,000 flying hours. He knows the difference between seagulls, balloons, exhaust, and a UFO. And it's insulting for people to think that he would think it's something else. He said they wouldn't have even seen it against the water, but it was light white water. And at first they noticed the Tic Tacs from within the waves. So it was partly underwater. It was within the waves. It was only the water conditions that day that allowed him to see it. He said he thinks it may have been communicating with something deeper under the water. He says that he doesn't believe that this is secret stuff from other countries, because this is 20 years ago. And if, let's say, an enemy country had this, we could be in a lot of trouble, because these things can really move around with impunity. And let's say fly into our airspace without being detected necessarily, although this is ultimately was detected. But he's basically saying we would probably know by now if another country had this type of technology 20 years ago, because we would just be in a lot of trouble. And we're lucky that they don't. And if we did have that technology, he doesn't believe that we do, as a military and aerospace guy. But he said it'd be a good thing if we did have that type of technology to protect ourselves. He said he turned down Joe Rogan 6 times before agreeing to be on Joe Rogan. He says Joe Rogan's security guys were all Navy SEALs. He says he met with people in Washington in a skiff and had private talks with government people that were unclassified in skiffs, with extremely smart people, and they all listened to what he was saying. So I found this interview on the Weaponized podcast very interesting. And here is a very credible, extremely intelligent guy that's basically saying this stuff exists and the government should start coming clean about it, which I think this disclosure process is happening. And if you want to know more about UFO stuff, the link to the Hannibal TV UFO YouTube playlist is in the description. And I'm very excited to watch the U.S. congressional hearings on unidentified aerial phenomena next Wednesday. Have a great night.